A fair disclaimer. Yes. Yes, I'm making another one of those Gojo should not have died videos. Yes, I am indeed making another one. I had some things I didn't say that I forgot to say, and I really wish I had said or clarified. I don't think I even did a great job in the first video. That thing got like more views than I think it should have gotten because it was such a not really a great video. I personally think it was good, but not that great. Anyways, this is gonna be another one of those. If you don't want to watch this, click off right now. JJK Season 4. The trailer for it is absolutely fire. I love the fight scene with Hikari and Kashimo. And I especially love the fact that they managed to feature Yuji, Sukuna, Megumi, and In-Chain. That fateful scene, that decisive scene that will, for the rest of JJK, alter the course of history. And specifically lead to one of the most cataclysmic moments in JJK. Gojo vs. Sukuna. And what this video is going to be about, a continuation to me arguing why Gojo should not have died. For me personally, I feel like this was a perfect time to talk about it once more, since I feel like I need to clarify myself. Since last video, I didn't have a clear direction. I was just arguing just for the sake of arguing. But I now fully agree with what I'm about to say. I fully accept that I'm arguing against Gojo dying as a whole, and I'm fully accepting the fact that I've got my reasons for this. Firstly, Gojo's character was not fulfilled. Gojo's character was in no way, shape, or form all that fulfilled, beyond maybe there being signs of progress. You gotta understand this one thing about Gojo. His birth, in fact, the reason I'm even calling him Gojo instead of Satoru Gojo is because he's been called that so many times, and not only is it easier on the tongue, but also because that's just what he's known as. Not really Satoru, just Satoru Gojo, or just Gojo even more. Calling him Satoru not only feels weird, but it's also because the show never really sees him call that so many times. This is because Gojo, at the very ripe old age of 0, was born with the 6 eyes. And you gotta know something. This is like being born with a trait that only you have. Like the last person to have that trait that wasn't you existed 400 years ago. The very idea that almost no one can relate to you, if anyone at all, is truly isolating. Especially for Gojo. He literally lived it for 28 straight years. And to the point where everyone didn't even treat him like a real human being. He wasn't allowed to be considered a real human being. He wasn't allowed to be a normal person who sought protection, who sought to enjoy things, who sought to play around, who sought to enjoy life. No, he was forced to being essentially a tool for his own clan. A tool for those who use him against evil. And he was pretty good at it. That's why they used him. They continued to use him without caring much for who he was. The fact that he has an annoying exterior personality is just proof of the fact that he didn't really know how to develop a personality. He was making one as he went. Because he wasn't allowed to be anything more than the strongest. The fact that he died before he got to fulfill that character role, to me, really, really sucks. It to me just seems like he had absolutely no respect for one of the, if not the most popular character in modern shonen anime, and in modern anime as a whole. Because when people think of JJK, they think about Satoru Gojo. And for me, this is a man, a very complex man, who went through so much, only to get so little back. He adopted Megumi to free him from the Zenin clan, and then gave him a life that Gojo would have not really wanted, since Megumi was still only used for his technique. But the fact is that Gojo's adopted son, Megumi, was treated the same way Gojo was from when he was younger, is insane. It's a very cool parallel. Not cool as in like something you can approve of, but cool as in like it's very symbolic. The idea that both of them were used for their technique rather than accepted for their humanity. For Gojo to die, that requires you to completely throw everything out of the window. Completely throw away the fact that he was a human being who had desires, who had dreams. He wasn't even allowed to have those. And him being able to override that, him being able to put that in the past, him being able to abandon that, would have been a good way to bring his character. But no. You had to just kill him right before he he develops the character to drop the idea that being strong was all this and all that. And especially since number 2 is about the moral victory, the moral standpoints, but contributes to Gojo's personality. Gojo and Sukuna are two sides of the same coin for number 2. The idea that Gojo and Sukuna are both isolated because they're the strongest. Throughout heaven and earth. Throughout the heavens and earth, I should say. I alone am the honored one. This is what Gojo says, and to be honest, you can see how that's the case. For him, he's isolated because he's the strongest of the modern era. There's no one that can really match up to him. Maybe Kenjaku, maybe Sukuna, but they're not of the modern era. Special great sorcerers like Yuta, or even Yuki, they can't really contest him. Not even Geto, I'd say. They can't even contest him. If they were to go in a full fight against him, they'd lose. His strength is what isolates him from the rest of the world. His infinity. The fact that he is infinitely distant from the world, and that the world is infinite divisions away from actually touching him, and so is he from the world, is proof of his own isolation. To treat that as something that can just be thrown away for the sake of plot convenience is crazy. Sukuna had the same thing, to be honest. He was born to be the strongest. He wasn't allowed to be a human being, but he embraced that. He embraced the idea of being a non-human. He embraced the idea of being a monster who only cared about pleasure and displeasure. He alone is the conceited one. He would rather live in such a way where he throws a bone into anything that interests him and then not do so for anything that doesn't. He would rather that be his whole life. And for Gojo to die or something like that would be conceding to evil, conceding to absolute hedonism. Especially since Gojo represents the will for the next generation to be their own force, to be their own generation, to be their own selves without having to be as strong, without there even needing to be as strongest. They should be strong on their own, and they should be the ones to inherit the world and change it as they see fit. That's what Gojo believed in, and that's why he wanted those like Yuji to surpass him. He had dreams that people like Yuji would actually surpass him eventually. And he was right for having those dreams, because it's natural to want the younger generation to succeed you if you're mentoring them. You'd want them to actually carry your teachings on. And the fact that Gojo died before he ever got to see those teachings carried on is crazy to me, since it also yields to Sukuna's philosophy. Which is not a good way to end a story. It's not a good way to end a strongest versus strongest. It's not really a good way to carry on a story. Because story should ideally have good narrative themes. A story should at least offer some form of contrast or resolution. And the fact is, if you're yielding to Sukuna's philosophy, you're yielding to the very idea that nothing is worth it, and that only the strong should live. Affirming social Darwinism where it's been long debunked and long abandoned. And potentially bringing it back to that simply because you needed the story to go on. You accidentally created a narrative miscommunication. You made a narrative misteaching in which you make everyone seem like they have to be strong, they have to not care about others. It gets across the very idea that community, humanity, and appreciating yourself as a person and appreciating others as people and letting the next generation grow into not having life be just fighting and death and tragedy. Throwing that out of the way and putting it in favor of all those things happening, and there is no respect for individuality, no respect for people, no respect for humanity in our community. Number 4, it was done better. There was a better way of doing Gojo's death without him dying. The prison realm was a pretty good solution. Steal Gojo away without killing him. He gained some time to, I'd say, probably train. 19 days is quite a bit of time, I'd say. And the sorcerers primarily had to go out of their way to do the culling ins without Gojo. They couldn't have every single one of their problems or fights solved by having Satoru Gojo there. They really couldn't. They needed to rely on their own strength. It's what Gojo would have wanted, if I'm being completely honest. He would have wanted next generation to surpass him. He literally says this. He wants the next generation to surpass him. People like Yuji, hell, Hakari, I'd say, Megumi, people like Higuruma. He doesn't say Higuruma's name. I don't think he ever talks to him, but Higuruma. People like those. Like the next generation, they have to fight for themselves. They should be able to use their own power and see that their power is actually able to change things, able to help them in life. Gojo would have wanted that. And he's able to get that while having to suffer with his own isolation. He's literally forced to face his own isolation for 19 days. The narrative significance of that moment now contrasted against the narrative unsignificant, the narrative debauchery and desecration that is devaluing Gojo as a person, devaluing the effort he put, conceding to a morally wrong idea and philosophy, and not really doing anything else besides giving shock value. Now, compare the two. Which one do you think is better? For me, I'd say the prison realm. And I have a solution, actually. What if instead of Gojo dying, he does get world cutting slashed, but on his cheek or something like that? Maybe his arm, maybe his cheek. And it shows like Gojo is the honored one. It would prove that he, throughout the heavens and earth, he really alone is the honored one. Because even at an attack like the world cutting slash that comes up at a moment of surprise, at a moment of doubt, that arises right after a moment of surefire victory, Gojo can still be there. Gojo can still perceive danger. He can still fight against it. He can still be considered victorious even by dodging an attack that would have killed him using the moment as surprise. And to prove that even in uncertainty, he alone is him. It would also give Sukuna some significance too. It's the idea that the only person that could really bridge the infinite distance between the strongest in the world is that of another strongest, of another person who understands that way, but uses it for a completely different purpose. And number 5 is that it would just be plain up done better, I'd say. If we were to just... Not... Number 5, I'd say it's a narrative oversight. Oversight by diminishing one of the key components of Gojo, the fighting, the 6 eyes. Because during this time when Gojo was winning, when Gojo declared the winner, he then is immediately bisected by the world cutting slash. That world cutting slash needed a lot of energy. It needed some cursed energy, and it needed to have made a spark that the 6 eyes could see. It is a literal atomic cursed energy, precise measurement, and precise vision tool. You can see the sparks of one cursed energy down to the atomic level, and somehow Gojo couldn't see that, and he died. His overconfidence is also played into something he has not gone past. His overconfidence when he went against Choji for the first time. Even when he was asleep, he was still pretty confident. He was confident that the 6 eyes and curse manipulation with Suguru Geto back when he was a good guy were unstoppable. That pride, Gojo seemingly just has never learned from that, considering he still felt proud. But I'd say that's rightful. He has all the right to feel good about winning, because he did it fairly, and he did it against overwhelming odds. A 3v1 and he won. And especially now a 4v1 because Gege is trying to end the story. I would say it would be kept at 3v1 since Gege would actually know how to write. Gege would actually know how to end Gojo off good. And again, Gojo could be sitting in the back there as a mentor. Gojo could genuinely be sitting back there, giving advice, like how Roshi does to Goku. Like how maybe Saitama does to Genos. How Koriichi does to Tanjiro, I'd say. Like anime senseis like that. Overall, that's it. See ya.